Let's turn to NASA's Artemis spacecraft next. It has finally arrived at the moon.
Since it was announced in 2017, space enthusiasts like yourself have been eager to see what will become of the Artemis program. The Artemis program's primary mission is to send humans to the moon for the first time in over 50 years. The program kicked off in 2022 with Artemis 1, and while this first mission was a resounding success, no one actually set foot on the moon. So, what's the holdup? Why has it taken 50 years to get back there? How were we able to send multiple manned missions with 1960s technology, and yet in 2023 we're struggling to replicate that success? In today's video, we'll fill you in on all the exciting details of the Artemis program and a major obstruction to its success that will shock you. It's been more than 50 years since any human stepped on the moon's surface. Gene Cernan was the last guy to do it, and that was in 1972 during the Apollo 17 mission. The Apollo program and subsequent moon orbiters have taught us a lot about the moon and even changed our perspective on planetary development. So if we've already been there, done that, why are we trying to go back? That's the most exciting part of the Artemis program. It's not just about returning to the moon. This time, there's a much bigger play at hand, which may or may not end in a bunch of people living on Earth's satellite. Let's get into the details. In Greek mythology, Artemis is the twin sister of the god Apollo. Like its name suggests, the Artemis program is supposed to continue right from where Apollo left off. NASA has seized this opportunity to show just how much space exploration has evolved in the last 50 years, and it's everything you can imagine, starting with an even loftier goal than the moon landing of 1969. The Artemis program features 4 distinct parts with a long-term goal of establishing a permanent human base on the moon, and an even longer-term goal of a human colony on Mars. The first part of the Artemis program was building a vehicle that could actually get to the moon. For that, NASA didn't hold back. They built their strongest and most powerful rocket ever. The Space Launch System, SLS, is taller than the Statue of Liberty, and at that size, it's also around 15% more powerful than the Saturn V rockets that launched the first humans to the moon in 1969. NASA says that the thrust of the SLS is like 25,000 train engines going off at the same time. The SLS produces a thrust of around 8.8 million pounds. That's a lot. As a matter of fact, the only other rocket to have produced more than that was the Soviet N-1. While it had a ridiculous thrust of 10 million pounds, it blew up all 4 times that it was tested. It turns out that more power is not always better. Unlike the Soviet N-1, the SLS is more stable and has successfully completed its first mission. To validate the rocket component and systems for future crewed missions, the SLS rocket was launched as part of the Artemis 1 mission on November 16, 2022. Artemis 1 was an unmanned mission to test the SLS, the Orion spacecraft, and most importantly, its heat shield. This leads us to the second part of the Artemis program, the actual spacecraft. The Orion spacecraft is the spacecraft that will be used for the Artemis program. Like the ones used for the Apollo program, Orion comes with a crew module designed by Lockheed Martin and a service module built by Airbus Defence and Space. Orion can carry up to 6 astronauts at once. It is reusable and has an emergency abort feature. The spacecraft is built to last a journey to the moon and even a journey to Mars. Orion will be able to stay in orbit longer than any spacecraft has ever done without docking to a space station. This is thanks to its unique architecture, which also allows it to navigate, communicate, and operate in a deep space environment. With several redundancies and features to ensure crew safety and protection, Orion has certainly learned from the mistakes of its predecessors. Speaking of the crew, the Artemis program will carry the first woman and first person of color to the surface of the moon. NASA officially announced the crew for Artemis 2, which is expected to launch in 2024, and they are Reed Wiseman, Commander, Victor Glover, Pilot, Christina Koch and Jeremy Hansen, Mission Specialists. The most exciting aspect of the Artemis program is that NASA plans to not only return to the Moon, but also stay there. That brings us to the third part of the program, which is the Lunar Gateway, a space station that will remain in orbit around the Moon. How exciting! The Gateway will be built in lunar orbit and is designed to be a multi-purpose outpost, acting as a science lab, a short-term dwelling module for astronauts, a holding area for rovers and robots, and a centre for solar-powered communication. While it's not a full human habitation on the lunar surface like we imagined, it's at least a start. The final part of the Artemis program is the Human Landing System, HLS. This is arguably the most important part of the Artemis program, as it's the system that will transport astronauts from the lunar surface to the Lunar Gateway and/or the Orion spacecraft. Basically, the HLS is the primary method of transportation to and from the Moon's surface. In 2021, SpaceX won the contract to build this landing system for NASA. And with that, we've summarised the Artemis program. Everything seems to be accounted for. Well, actually, a look through the Apollo program archives reveals one final adversary determined to keep us from our moon-inhabiting dreams: lunar dust. Dust? Yes, dust. It's hard to imagine that something seemingly insignificant like dust can do so much damage. But every astronaut who has ever been to the Moon, from Armstrong to Cernan, has complained about the Moon's dust. The dust on the Moon is made up of tiny particles of rock and minerals. These particles are so small that they can easily get inside spacesuits and practically everywhere. Lunar dust smells like gunpowder and looks like it too. While it doesn't swallow up astronauts whole like quicksand or blow up in the presence of oxygen, as earlier scientists thought it would, lunar dust is still very dangerous and limiting. Eugene Cernan, commander of Apollo 17, stated that one of the most aggravating, restricting facets of lunar surface exploration is the dust and its adherence to everything, no matter what kind of material, whether it be skin, suit material, metal, no matter what it be, and its restrictive friction-like action to everything it gets on. On Earth, dust can be pretty annoying. It gets into your equipment, your laptop and electronic devices, making them underperform or malfunction. Now, multiply that nuisance by 10 and you'll be close to understanding how bad lunar dust can get. Lunar dust can obstruct vision, making landing and other activities on the Moon all the more difficult. Alan Bean of Apollo 12 reported that, after lunar liftoff, a great quantity of dust floated free within the cabin. This made breathing without a helmet difficult, and enough particles were present in the cabin atmosphere to affect our vision. Lunar dust is extremely abrasive and can scratch surfaces very easily. It's also charged with static electricity, which makes it cling to surfaces and makes it very difficult to remove. It can easily enter the human lungs, and extended exposure can cause respiratory problems like silicosis, a serious consideration for astronauts who plan to spend long durations on the Moon, but there is a fix. While lunar dust poses a challenge to the Artemis program, just as did Apollo, there are a couple of ways NASA plans to tackle it. One way is to equip astronauts with better spacesuits. For the Artemis program, astronauts will don the Axiom spacesuit on their journey to the Moon. Axiom reports that their new spacesuits, which were revealed on March 15, 2023, are better than the ones used during the Apollo program. These new spacesuits have a big, clear helmet bubble with built-in lights and a camera for wider fields of vision. Compared to the Apollo suits, the Axiom suits are built for better movement on the lunar surface and can accommodate a broader variety of body types. While they don't exactly tackle the problem of dust sticking to the spacesuits, they do at least help mitigate some of the other problems that lunar dust causes. Besides, Axiom has explained that the current spacesuits are only a prototype. The final spacesuits are expected to have better tech against lunar dust. Another, more interesting way NASA plans to tackle lunar dust is by building lunar bases out of it. At Swamp Works, progress is already being made converting dust into sustainable building material. They've created a robot capable of harvesting lunar soil for lunar construction. This robot would help astronauts dig lunar dust for use in creating polymer composite concrete, PCC. PCC is formed when you mix lunar dust and polymers in just the right amount. This PCC can be fed into a 3D printer and used to create very strong structures of any form, from tables to full-on habitats. As we've seen, Artemis is more than just a simple moon landing. It's a complex and multifaceted program that involves cutting-edge technology, international collaboration, and a long-term vision for space exploration and extraplanetary habitation. Do you believe we'll ever build human habitats on the moon? Let us know in the comments.